My name is Ana Reyes. For 10 years, I was a police officer. For 6 of those years, my partner was a German shepherd named Leo. He wasn't just my partner. He was my shadow, my confidant, and the one steady thing in a world that was always shifting under my feet. And in the end, when that world completely fell apart, he was the one who put it back together. This story doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts in a sun-drenched training yard behind the canine unit. I remember the day I met him. He was a lanky, 1-year-old shepherd with paws too big for his body and ears that seemed to have a mind of their own. Most of the other dogs were barking, posturing, trying to look tough. Not Leo. He was sitting quietly, watching me with an intelligence that felt almost human. His eyes, the color of rich, dark amber, seemed to see right through the uniform and into the nervous, hopeful person underneath. That's Leo, the head trainer, a gruff old-timer named Sergeant Masters, had said. He's a smart one. A little too sensitive, maybe. Needs the right handler. I knelt down. Leo didn't rush forward. He just watched me, his head tilted. I held out my hand, and he took a slow step, then another, until his wet nose nudged my palm. He sniffed me once, then gave my hand a soft, gentle lick. In that moment, something clicked. It wasn't just a handler choosing a dog. It felt like we were choosing each other. Our life together fell into a rhythm. My small apartment, once quiet and sterile, was suddenly filled with the clicking of his nails on the hardwood floors, the soft thump of his tail against the couch, and his gentle, rumbling snores at the foot of my bed. He was with me on every shift, sitting in the specially designed back of my patrol car, his head perched between the front seats, his warm breath on my neck. He wasn't just a presence. He was a master at his job. We trained for everything: tracking, apprehension, evidence detection. His specialty was scent work. He could find a lost child in a dense forest or a hidden stash of narcotics under a car's floorboards. His nose was a miracle of nature, and my job was to learn to read him, to understand the subtle shift in his posture, the flick of his ear, the change in his breathing that told me he was onto something. I remember one call especially. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, had wandered away from a family picnic in the state park. Hours had passed. Night was falling, and the temperature was dropping. Panic was setting in. Her parents were beside themselves, their faces pale with terror. I was given a small, pink sweater she had been wearing. I let Leo get the scent, his great nose buried in the soft fabric. "Find her, buddy," I whispered, my voice tight with urgency. "Go find her." He took off, not with a frantic run, but with a focused, ground-eating trot. He led us through thick underbrush, over a shallow creek, and up a rocky incline. For almost an hour, we followed, my heart pounding with every step. Then, he stopped. He stood at the entrance to a small, hollowed-out log and let out a soft, low woof. Not an aggressive bark, but a gentle announcement. I shined my flashlight inside, and there she was, curled up, cold and crying, but safe. The look on her parents' faces when we brought her back. That's why I did the job. That's why we did the job. Leo was my hero. But to me, he was also just my Leo. The one who would nudge his head under my hand when I was filling out paperwork late at night. The one who would greet me with a full-body wiggle and a favorite slobbery tennis ball every single morning. He was my family. In a job that can make you feel isolated and hard, he kept me soft. He kept me human. And then came the night that burned it all down. It was supposed to be a standard warrant service. A drug bust on a mid-level dealer named Rico Vargas. My human partner, Dave Miller, and I had been working the case for months. Dave was a good cop, a bit of a hothead but solid. He had a wife and 2 kids. We were part of a bigger team, a tactical unit, but we were the first ones through the door. I remember the splintering wood as the ram hit the door, the smell of stale beer and something sharp chemical, the yelling, "Police! Search warrant!" It all happened so fast. A blur of chaos. A figure in the dim hallway. A flash of metal. Dave went down. I saw it. I saw him fall. I drew my weapon. I shouted. I fired. Everything they train you to do. When the smoke cleared, Vargas was down, and so was Dave. But the story that was told wasn't the one I lived. They separated me from Leo immediately. That was the first cut, the deepest one. As they led me away, I could hear him barking frantically from my patrol car. It was a sound of pure distress, a sound I had never heard from him before. It ripped through me. "You can't take my dog," I pleaded. "He needs to stay with me. He's evidence now." Reyes, one of the detectives, a man named Rollins, I barely knew, said coldly. Like everything else, the interrogation room was cold. The coffee was bitter. The questions were a dizzying loop of "What did you see? And why did you fire?" I told them the truth, over and over. "Vargas shot Dave. I shot Vargas." But their story was different. The forensics came back, they said. The bullet that killed Dave Miller came from my gun, my service weapon. "No," I said, the word catching in my throat. "No, that's impossible. That's a lie." But the evidence, they claimed, was irrefutable. They said I'd panicked. They said Dave and I had been arguing earlier that day, which was true. A stupid disagreement about a report, and they twisted it into a motive. They painted me as an unstable, trigger-happy cop who shot her own partner in a moment of rage and confusion. Vargas, they said, was unarmed when I killed him. They found his gun, conveniently, on the other side of the room. Clean of prints.it was a setup. A clean, perfect, soul-crushing setup. But why? I didn't know. I couldn't understand. All I knew was that my life was over. The department I had dedicated my life to was now my accuser. The brothers and sisters in blue I had trusted now looked at me with contempt. The trial was a surreal nightmare. I sat in the defendant's chair, a ghost in a borrowed suit. My public defender, Mr. Evans, was a kind but tired man, drowning under a mountain of what the prosecution called facts, the ballistics report. The testimony from other officers on the scene, officers I thought were my friends, who spoke of my short temper and the tension between me and Dave. They were lies, or half-truths twisted into daggers. Detective Rollins, the lead investigator on the case, presented the evidence with a calm, chilling certainty. He looked at the jury, his face a mask of solemn duty, and told them I was a murderer. Every day, the first thing I thought of was Leo. Where was he? Was he scared? Was he eating? The precinct kennel was a cold, lonely place. I knew Sergeant Masters would look after him, but Leo wasn't just any dog. He was my dog. He would be lost without me. And I was completely, utterly lost without him. The thought of him, alone in a cage, confused and waiting for me, was a physical pain worse than any fear for my own future. Dave's wife, Maria, sat in the front row every day. Her eyes filled with a bottomless grief, burned into me. She hated me. The whole world hated me. The media had a field day. Killer cop. She devil in uniform. They forgot all the good I had ever done. They forgot the little girl and the woods. All that mattered was the new story. The jury was out for less than 4 hours. I knew, before they even walked back into the room, what the verdict would be. You could feel it in the air. The finality. On the charge of murder in the first degree, the foreman said, his voice flat, "We the jury find the defendant, Ana Reyes, guilty." The world went silent. The sounds of the courtroom, the gasps, Maria Miller's sob, the reporters scrambling faded into a dull roar. A single thought echoed in the emptiness of my mind. Leo. The sentencing was 2 weeks later. In our state, a conviction for murdering a police officer carried only one penalty: death. It wasn't a shock. It was just the last nail. Mr. Evans visited me the day before the final sentencing hearing. I was hollowed out. A shell of a person, Anna, he said, his face etched with defeat. There's nothing more I can do on the legal front right now. We'll appeal, of course, but the odds. He trailed off. It's okay, Mr. Evans, I said, my voice raspy. You did your best. He looked down at his hands, then back at me. I did have one idea. It's unorthodox. It's probably not going to be allowed, but I'm going to ask the judge. I'm going to ask if Leo can be in the courtroom tomorrow. My head snapped up. Hope, a feeling I thought had died, flickered weakly inside me. What? Why? As a character witness, in a way, he explained, though he looked like he didn't quite believe it himself. To show your humanity. To show the bond you had. To remind them you're not the monster they've painted you as. And because I thought you should have a chance to see him one last time. Tears, hot and sudden, streamed down my face. The first I'd shed since the verdict. Can you really do that? I can ask, he said. It's a long shot. Anna, a Hail Mary. But we're out of options. The next day, I was led into the courtroom in shackles. The room was heavy with a somber procedural silence. I didn't look at Maria Miller. I couldn't. I just stared at the polished wood of the table in front of me, waiting for the final words that would officially end my life. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Albright, entered. We all rose. She sat and began to speak, her voice droning on, about the sanctity of the law and the gravity of my crime. I barely heard her. My mind was a blank slate of despair. Then, Mr. Evans stood up. Your Honor, before you pass sentence, the defense has one final unconventional request. Judge Albright looked down at him over her glasses, her expression one of severe annoyance. Mr. Evans, the time for requests has long passed. I understand, Your Honor, but this is a request pertaining to my client's character, which is a factor in sentencing, even in a case like this. I am asking for permission to bring my client's canine partner, Leo, into the courtroom. A ripple of murmurs went through the room. The prosecutor shot to his feet. Objection. This is a circus. A dog is not a witness. This is a blatant attempt to manipulate the court's sympathy. Judge Albright banged her gavel. Order. She stared at Mr. Evans. Her eyes narrowed. Explain yourself, counselor. And this had better be good, Your Honor, Mr. Evans said, his voice steady. For 6 years, this animal was Officer Reyes's partner. He's a decorated member of the K9 unit. He is living, breathing proof of her capacity for dedication, for partnership, for trust. Before you sentence this woman to die, I am asking you to look at the whole person. The relationship she has with this dog is a part of who she is. And frankly, Your Honor, she deserves a chance to say goodbye. The courtroom was silent. I held my breath. I could see the judge wrestling with the request. It was absurd. It was against all protocol. But then, her gaze flickered to me, sitting there in my prison jumpsuit, shackled and broken. Maybe she saw something in my eyes. Maybe she just had a moment of compassion. Very well, Mr. Evans, she said, her voice tight with reluctance. You have 5 minutes. Bailiff, escort the dog in. But so help me, if there is any disruption. My heart hammered against my ribs. 5 minutes. I was going to see my boy. The side door of the courtroom opened. And there he was. Sergeant Masters was holding his leash. Leo looked thinner. His coat wasn't as shiny. But it was him. His amber eyes scanned the room, wide with confusion and anxiety. He whined softly, a low questioning sound. Then his eyes found me. His entire body went rigid. His ears shot up. A strangled yelp escaped his throat. He pulled against the leash, his paws scrabbling on the smooth floor. He wanted to come to me. All the training, all the discipline, was warring with the pure, instinctual need to get to his person. Leo, I whispered, my voice breaking. Tears were blurring my vision. Sergeant Masters walked him slowly toward the defense table. The entire courtroom was captivated. The reporters had their pens down. Even Maria Miller was watching, her expression unreadable. They stopped a few feet from me. Sergeant Masters unclipped the leash. Okay, boy, he said softly. I expected him to launch himself at me, to cover me in kisses, to whine and cry and press his body against mine. I braced myself for the impact, my arms aching to hold him, but Leo did something I never would have expected. He took one step toward me, his tail giving a single hopeful thump. His eyes were locked on mine, full of love and pain. But then, he stopped. He froze. His nose lifted into the air, twitching. His head turned slowly, deliberately, away from me. He was catching a scent that was more important, more compelling, than even his need for me. My blood went cold. This was his alert posture. This was what he did on the job. He ignored me completely. He began to move, his nose to the ground, then in the air again. He walked past the prosecutor's table. He walked past the jury box, his claws making a soft, rhythmic click, click, click in the silent room. What is that dog doing? The prosecutor hissed. He's working. I breathed, more to myself than to anyone else. Leo stopped in the first row of the gallery. He stood directly in front of Detective Rollins. Rollins, who had been watching with a smirk on his face, now looked uneasy. "Get that thing away from me," he muttered. Leo didn't move. He just stood there, his nose pointed directly at Rollins's feet. And then he did the one thing I had trained him to do for a very specific, rare chemical compound we had encountered in a high-level cartel case a year prior. A binding agent they used to cut their drugs that was almost impossible to detect by normal means. It was a scent so unique. We'd spent weeks training on it. Leo sat down. He locked his eyes on Rollins, and he let out a single, sharp, deafening bark. His official, final alert. The courtroom erupted. "What is the meaning of this?" Judge Albright demanded. Banging her gavel, Rollins shot to his feet. Panic was written all over his face. The confident, smug detective was gone, replaced by a cornered animal. "It's nothing. The dog is crazy. Get it out of here." But I knew. And Mr. Evans, seeing the look on my face, knew. "Your Honor," he shouted over the noise. "That is Leo's trained alert signal. There's something on that man." Rollins made a fatal mistake. He tried to shove Leo away with his foot. That was the only trigger Leo needed. It wasn't an attack command, but a defensive one. Leo sprang up, not to bite, but to block. He planted himself firmly in front of Rollins, teeth bared, a deep, guttural growl rumbling in his chest. He was holding his ground. He was protecting me. He was doing his job. Two bailiffs started toward Rollins, who was now sweating profusely. "Stay back," he yelled, his hand instinctively going to the gun on his hip. It was a move he shouldn't have made. It was an admission of guilt. In that instant, everything became clear. The setup, the clean gun, the doctored evidence. Rollins had been on the cartel's payroll. Dave must have found out. The drug bust was a setup not for Vargas, but for Dave. Rollins was there in the chaos, and he was the one who shot Dave. He used the confusion to plant the evidence, to frame me, the partner who was right there but blinded by the mayhem, the scent. I yelled, my voice ringing with a strength I hadn't felt in months. "Check his shoes. It's the binding agent from the Zetas case. It gets into the leather. Check his shoes." Rollins completely lost it. He shoved past the bailiffs and made a break for the door. It was pure chaos, but the doors were blocked. He was trapped. He looked around wildly, his eyes finally landing on me. The hatred in them was pure and terrifying. It was all the proof anyone needed. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Rollins was taken into custody, under intense questioning, and faced with the evidence they found after a full search, not just the scent on his shoes, but encrypted messages on a burner phone and offshore bank account numbers. He confessed to everything. He had been a mole for the cartel for years. Dave Miller had gotten suspicious, and Rollins used the raid as an opportunity to eliminate him and frame me for it. He'd orchestrated the whole thing, coercing other officers to support his story. My conviction was overturned. The words "exonerated" and "released immediately" were spoken by the same judge who had been ready to sentence me to death. I walked out of the courthouse not in shackles, but into the bright, blinding sunlight of freedom. And waiting for me at the bottom of the steps with Sergeant Masters was Leo. The moment he saw me, truly saw me free, he broke away. He came barreling toward me, a furry, 100-pound missile of pure, unadulterated joy. He hit me with so much force. We both tumbled to the grass in a heap of flailing limbs and happy yelps. He licked every inch of my face, his tail beating a frantic rhythm against the ground. I wrapped my arms around his neck and just buried my face in his fur, breathing in the familiar, wonderful scent of him. I sobbed, not with grief or despair, but with a relief so profound it felt like my soul was being washed clean. He had saved me, my loyal, sensitive, brilliant boy. He hadn't just stunned the court. He had uncovered the truth in a way no human could have. He had sniffed out the lie that had swallowed my life whole. I didn't go back to the force. I couldn't. The uniform was tainted for me now. The department offered me my job back, with a full apology and back pay. I politely declined. My life as a cop was over. Instead, I took the settlement money the city offered me to avoid a lawsuit, and I bought a small house with a big yard, miles away from the city, nestled in the quiet hills where the air was clean. Leo officially retired from service. His only job now is to be a dog. Our days are simple now. We go for long walks in the woods, not searching for anyone, just enjoying the quiet. We play fetch until he's happily exhausted. He sleeps on my bed now, not just at the foot of it, his heavy head often resting on my pillow. His snore's a comforting lullaby. Sometimes, at night, I wake up from a bad dream. The memory of the cold cell and the cold face is still clinging to me, and then I'll feel a wet nose nudge my hand in the dark. I'll open my eyes and see his two amber ones watching me, filled with that same steady, knowing light I saw the day we first met. He is my partner. He is my hero. He is my family. My name is Reyes, and this is the story of how my German shepherd, Leo, did more than just stun a courtroom. He gave me back my life, and every single day, I make sure he knows he's the best boy in the whole world.